Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here with us, for participating to this new masterclass of ETERIA project. I will introduce the masterclass on conflict and memories that will be coordinated by Fabio Toledi, that is here with us. ETERIA is an international project coordinated by the Italian Center of International Theatre Institute, E.T.E.R.I.A, Italy, in partnership with Teatro Zakynthos, Constanta National History and Archaeology Museum from Romania, the North Macedonian Center of ITI, and the Augmented and Virtual Reality Lab of the Department of Engineering for Innovation of University of Salento. The project ETERIA is co-funded by the European Union Creative Europe program, Strand Culture of the cooperation projects. I will give the floor directly to Fabio to start the masterclass. Thank you again to everybody to be here, and yeah, let's start.
Okay. Good afternoon. Also, as you know, we have today and tomorrow masterclass, and also for this reason, I think that today I will introduce some elements to develop more also in the masterclass of tomorrow morning. And there are many things to say. As you know, with Straghe di Theatro, we have started many years ago to work in the conflict zones, and also I coordinate the international network of International Theatre Institute of Theatre in Conflict Zones, in which we have the participation of many different theaters and playwrights and directors from all over the world. Of course, the topic is very important, and mainly in this period we can consider that this aspect is tragically very actual and present in the life of thousands of people of many different countries, and also that involve also some countries in which we have worked and we want to continue to work in the difficulties of this period. The reference is clear, for Palestinian situation in this moment, and also I think that we can consider some aspect strongly connected with the actual dimension of the dynamic of society in this moment. But our point of starting point is connected with the theater and the presence of theater. But like I've said in the introduction, I want to give some topics that we will develop, and also is the base generally of the sense of the work of this project too. As you know, we have two different lines in this project. The first one is connected with some figures of the mythological dimension of the women, connected with the female dimension of the myth. This is one side, and also the other side is connected with the Antigone figure, like an element very important in the tradition of the ancient Greek drama, but that continue to be present in the centuries, like an element very essential and important. Also, as you know, we have developed the interpretation in this last month of Maria Zambrano. Is a Spanish philosopher that lived in exile for many years, first in Rome, then in Paris, and arrived only in the end of her life, coming back out of the exile, coming back in Spain, and after the dictatorship of Francisco Franco, which for this reason she was in exile. And Maria Zambrano has written a very important reinterpretation of Antigona, that was the tomb of Antigona, that unfortunately is not present in English language to have possible references, but we have in the text, of course, in Spanish, was written in Spanish, but we have in Spanish, in the Italian, and now we have a very recent translation by Mary Yossi that is not with us now, but she was present in the last month also in lecture. I think that we can find the first aspect to consider when we speak about the ancient Greek drama, something connected with the dynamic of cultural dimension of the modernity, because Theodore Grammatas, that has directed the Department of Performing Arts in the University of Athens, with whom I have worked for many years in the past, we can consider a paradox that the tragedy was invented by Nietzsche in a certain time, in a certain way. We can find this dimension, it is a provocation also, but in which we can find a very interesting part of true and very interesting dimension of something that when we speak about the ancient Greek drama, we speak about something very, very far from our knowledge, from our mind structure, from our dimension of heritage also. We can recall something, but also mainly we can consider the action of the philologist, of the German philologist, the very powerful action that started from the end of 18th century and entered in a transformation of some aspect very important. As you know, the original title of the Birth of Tragedy of Nietzsche is the Birth of Tragedy by the Spirit of Music. And the whole title is this one, or the first version of the work of Friedrich Nietzsche, that was written in 1876. We have another long period in which Nietzsche has not published officially this writing, very important for the development of the new tradition, a new heritage in the modern theater. And after more than 10 years, he has published the final version, but with a very strong critical position in front of the previous text of the Birth of Tragedy by the Spirit of Music. But this second part of the title of the first edition, generally we lose this dimension of this connection with what is this connection that comes the Birth of Tragedy in connection and coming from the Spirit of Music. I think that in the last 25-30 years, mainly by the support of Nicole Louraud, that is a very interesting French philosopher, with the book The Tragedy of Athens, the politic between shadow and utopia, and also the children of Athena is another text in which the idea of civilization, or the dimension of the polis, the life of the polis, is interpreted in a different way by the tradition that comes from the Hegel interpretation. In the last 30 years, we can say that we have discovered some aspect that has criticized and also has approached the dimension of Hegel interpretation of the tragedy, and mainly of Antigone too, like an element of the conflict between the subjectivity, the individual, in front of the city, in front of the dynamic of the polis. This dimension is based on some idea connected with the idealistic philosophy of Hegel, in which the main part is the conflict between subjectivities. The model is to consider what is the general development of the cultural dynamic connected with the ancient Greek drama, of the protagonist and antagonist, a conflict between two strong subjectivities connected with the event in which the destiny and the role of the city, of the polis, is involved in a dynamic of deep crisis. From Nicole Laureau, we can say that we can discover the main role of choir. I prefer to call this part chorus, not choir, because the dimension of chorus is more connected with the dimension of the voice and singing. And we can consider, in a certain way, the dimension of the spirit of the music that Nietzsche has recalled when he has titled The Birth of Tragedy by the Spirit of Music. What is the references of Nietzsche in his work that is very important and also is a starting point, for example, for Antonin Artaud, the idea of the Les Théâtres sont doubles of Antonin Artaud comes from a deep approach connected with the Nietzsche philosophy, with the dimension to discover something that we have lost, something connected with the root in which we are not able to recognize our connection. The main idea of Nietzsche, I think that you know, is to reconnect with the deep tradition of the Mediterranean heritage, in which we can discover something that in the modernity we have lost. This dimension is deeply connected not with the writings, not with the dimension of the book, of the culture connected with the book and the alphabetical connection with the writings, but is something connected with the dance, with the singing, with the acting, not like an element of literature, but like an element connected with the deep connection of the ritual dimension that was founded before the institution of tragedy. In a certain way, we can consider the institution of tragedy like an element of transformation of society. As you know, what is connected in this period, in these last years, the international debate on aesthetic philosophers is connected with what is the dimension of the crisis of Neolithic experiences. This aspect is strongly connected with the approach of Nietzsche, in which we have to consider something that we have forgotten, something that we have lost, that is deeply connected with the dimension in which the theater comes from a ritual dimension, something connected deeply with an element, not literary element also, but something connected with the ritual and a dimension of the cultural aspect, mostly connected with the experience of trances, for example, when we have to collocate what is the place of the tragedy. The place of the tragedy was connected with the celebration of a god, a particular kind of god, not a god, indifferent god, but was connected with Dionysus. And Dionysus can express some element deeply connected, for example, with the animality. Dionysus is not a dimension of humankind, it's a dimension of the divinity connected with the deep senses of the excess of something that is not connected with the rationality. I wanted also to open another little specification to be more precise. The idea of the interpretation of Nietzsche of Birth of Tragedy for many years was connected with the dimension of the dialectic and the challenge between Apollinian dimension and Dionysiac dimension. This is not accepted in the recent studies by many different scholars, and I think that is correct this distance. because the expression of Apollinian dimension is connected with the institution of arts, for example, but the Dionysiac dimension is connected with something connected with the deep senses of the excess of the body, of the experience, the the madness, the dimension of the not controlled senses and feeling. And this dimension of the not rational dimension of Dionysiac things is deeply connected with the place of the theater. The tragedy takes place during the great Dionysiac celebration and are presented in connection with a celebration. Also, there are a lot of studies, very recent, connected with the relationship of Eleusis mysteries, the dimension of the Orphic dimension. It's not possible to separate this aspect in connection with the strong heritage and tradition that is deeply connected with the Mediterranean culture. And this is the aspect in which the dimension of the myth, the dimension of the organization of a very strong interpretation of the life, of the true, what is true. You know, I think that you know very well that in the classical approach that we have received from the ancient time, mainly in Italy, but in all Mediterranean area, we have a very strong Aristotelic interpretation that is deeply connected with a certain kind of interpretation of what is the subjectivity, what is the community, what is the dimension in connection with the rituality. All these aspects are considered in a dimension in which the artistic expression is something not connected with the research of the truth. And we enter in another aspect very important that we are not so far by the topic of today. Because for me in this moment, and I'm sharing with you the horizon of the discussion that I'm trying to develop in this last month, and also with the work on in the theater, in the new performances that we are preparing, is to understand and to create a strong connection in which the deep roots of our heritage is an opportunity to reconsider the work connected with the theater like an element of the process of the knowledge of the human being, the knowledge of women and men, to transform the society through a new interpretation of the creation of the truth. This is a political aspect also of the theater, because as we know, we are living a conflict in this moment, and we are narrated by the conflict that we are living. In this moment, we have a very strong effort to describe, for example, in the conflict in Palestine, we describe with some words and with a tale of what is happening. For example, in the newspaper, in the Italian newspaper, in the newspaper in the United States, the description of the conflict is the conflict between Israel and Hamas, a state against a group, and a group that is defined a terroristic group. Also, to be clear, of course, I have chosen in my life to work against the terrorism, to work against the dimension of violence, and I don't support this dimension of to eliminate misunderstanding on this. Is not. I'm not speaking about this. The strong dimension, the strong difficulties is also to understand if we continue to describe the conflict between one state and a terroristic group, we are not telling nothing about the women and men that are living in Israel, in Cisjordania, in occupied territories by Israeli army, in Gaza strips and so on. But we are describing, we are living day by day with the description of the conflict in this way. And this description is a very strong cultural effort. We are describing everything. For example, we are considering like a secondary effect the bombing of the airport in Syria of Aleppo and Damascus of the last in the last 10 days by Israeli army. And we can consider another problem that there are, it's not possible to consider that there are victims and there are, it's not the real procedure, but this mistake very strong comes from a part of empire. We are a part of empire. Italy is a part of empire, and also Greece too, and Romanian too, and Polish too, and we are part of empire, of one empire in which we are occupied by the US army. We are not free because we have lost the Second World War and we are occupied on this. But what is the story that we are telling? What is the Selbstvorstellung of this part of the world of empire? That we are the free world against the dictatorship. This description doesn't work. This description is a cultural interpretation of the conflict. And we are inside the dynamic of the conflict. We can consider the huge effort that one of the most important economical sector of the United States. For example, do you know what is the balance, economical balance for the weapons of the United States? How many money United States spend for the weapons? 800 billions. 800 billions for the army, and is the amount that overcome the amount of all the money of all other countries summoned, added, are the superior, all the money that they, this is a very concrete, I'm not anti-American, I have finished my period of anti-Americanism. I'm trying to describe this dimension like a cultural dynamic in which there are a very, very important and strong interest. Also with our friend from Romania, I think that if we can start to speak about the Ukrainian invasion by Russia, we have to consider what is the situation of Constanta, that is strongly connected and very, very close to the front of the battle. Military front is something very, and also we have to start to recognize what are the cultural dynamic of the conflict. This is our very important role in this moment, in which there are a lot of many different things. For example, for me, it's very important to try to find the tool and the instrument to overcome the dimension of the contraposition. It's not in this moment a problem to say, I am pro-Palestinian dimension, or I am pro-Israeli dimension. This is not our work. I am very close to the Palestinian people for my history, for my work, for my friendship, and also for my education that was connected with the Hebrew community in Milan. Is a part very important of my life, the connection of the Hebrew community in Milan when I was born until my 21, 22 years old. But also for this reason, also in my position is the same position of an author that has worked a lot on Antigone, that is Judith Butler. Judith Butler has a position very clear about this dimension of the conflict between Israeli and Palestinian. But also the example that I want to give to you is not Israeli army against Hamas that are terrorists. The problem is another, is the occupation of the territory, the opportunity in 30 years. We arrived from 100,000 settlers in Palestine. We arrived in 30 years to 800,000 settlers in occupied territories in Palestine. This is one of the most important aspects. And also, what is the cultural role? This is a very important question that we have to find. And also, we have to refine in the connection with the topic of today. The topic is memory and conflict. And always is a problem of memory when we start to speak about the conflict. Because the memory is something that recreates the cultural justification of the conflict. In Greece, we will work about Mnemosyne myth. Mnemosyne myth is, of course, something connected deeply with the dimension of the memory. But what is this memory of Mnemosyne? This is start to be a very interesting topic, and I think that we will develop a lot on this. But, you know, Mnemosyne is the figure, the female figure that give the life to the muse. The muse are the figures that are connected with the artistic expressions, the different artistic expressions. And also there is connection of the artistic expression and Mnemosyne, the elaboration of the memory. But the memory is not a recreation of something. Also, the philosophical attitude of the last years of the last century is very clear about the knowledge of Plato that says we can only recognize something. We can only recognize something. Also, we know something that we have just known. This approach is strongly and very important to reconnect with the figure of the Mnemosyne. And also, what is the memory of the conflict? In general, what is the memory of the conflict? And also, we have a transformation of the memory. It's not something objective. The memory is a creation, is a continuous creation. For example, I give you an example, very, very interesting. You know the movie of Roberto Benigni, La vita è bella, Life is wonderful. And the end of the movie is a fake, because the US Army opened Auschwitz. It's not true. It's an interpretation. And it's a strong interpretation of the transformation of the memory. When we start to tell a story, we can recreate the story. When we start to speak about a myth, we recreate a myth. With this dimension of the suffix re is a repetition of something, recreate. The repetition, you know, in theater, repetition is the la prova, is the rehearsal, is the repetition. And it's something that, and also we prepare a performance and we do another. We are not only in one moment, but also this moment is unique, but also we have a connection with the repetition. This connection with the repetition is connected with the rhythm. The rhythm is the base. The rhythm is the secret of art. Doesn't exist a rhythm if Doesn't exist a rhythm, we have no music. The music is based on the rhythm. The poem is based on the rhythm. The dimension is rhythmical. The knowledge is rhythmical. And also in this, we are speaking about the principle that stay before the literature, before the writing. We stay in the roots of the myth, and also is the sense of my intervention for tomorrow too. What is the connection between myth and tragedy? You know, we have two very extraordinary books of Jean-Pierre Vernant and Vidal-Naquet, the myth and tragedy. Myth and tragedy. Myth and tragedy. It's essential in this moment to understand the connection between myth and tragedy. Also, this is the reason I am speaking with the people that worked just with us. This is the reason that I've said I speak about Antigona not like a character, but like a myth. Because we are looking for the root of something, the deep connection that is the base of our heritage too, that we have lost, something that we have lost. And the attempt that we can try to do is to recover this connection with the deep dimension. Sì, posso condividere lo schermo? Sì.
Sì.
Can you see the text?
Yes.
This is a very important part of Antigone and of Sophocles' text. Here is thy chosen home. This is the house that we have chosen. This is our home in Thebes above all lands, with thou thy mother, bride of Zeus. This is a very important references, because now the second strophe speak to Dionysus and is calling to Dionysus, and in the last part, come Lord with thy company, come Lord with your company, thy own nymphs, who with wild night-long dances praise thee, bountiful Dionysus. This is very precise invocation. In a certain moment, we have the direct connection to, hey, God, come and do your ritual. And this ritual is not connected with the dimension of the thought or the logical dimension. It's connected with the chorus of nymphs that has to dance in the madness, losing themselves. One of the most important aspects in general is, you know, we have a word very important that is enthusiasm. But the word enthusiasm is the entheo dimension, the presence of God inside. And this presence of this God is not the God of the rationality. It's a God in which I'm losing myself, in which I'm strongly connected with the animality, with the animal that I was, that we were. And this connection is very important, because the interpretation, rationalistic interpretation of the tragedy, take off a very strong and very important part. Is not only rational, and the life is not only rational, because Max Weber, you know that sometimes I remember that I was a sociologist. Max Weber said the iron cage of the rationality. If someone is only rational, you are in the total madness. And also the example of the conflict is an example of madness. The conflict is not something human, but is the founding of the humanities. In the last week, I have given to Giada, Sofia, and Carola the book of Maria Gimbutas about Mother Goddess. It's an example about the research connected with the Paleolithic society, in which the Mother Goddess was a strong position, in which we have no border, we have no armies, we have no war in this way. But also we have to start to recognize that there is a male dimension that is connected with the border, with the army, with the conflict. Now, it's very important that in the heritage of the ancient Greek drama, the part of the conflict is very important. We can consider an essential part, but also it's not possible. Also, Homerus is connected with the conflict. Of course, we can consider the history of Odysseus like an element strongly connected with the experience of the war. Otherwise, there is no story. Why he goes to Troia, why he's going there? Of course, he's participating like a soldier, like a chief of soldiers. That strategist, very, very important, very brilliant, and also continue to stay in the sea for many, many years for the responsibilities of to have betrayed the promise of peace, celebrating the peace, giving the horses, and also is that this was something that the gods can accept. And also we have to consider the base, but also the presence of the war. It's not possible to consider Shakespeare without the presence of the war. It's not possible to consider a long part, a very important part of the war in the dimension of the life of theater. And also, as I've said many times, of course, the life of Bertolt Brecht was strongly influenced by the war. Meyer called it too, and many, many other directors or playwrights was strongly connected with this. But also the nature of the global dimension of the conflict that we are living is something that continue to ask to us to define always some aspect that we have to develop more and more. Now I can stop if you have some questions or some topics that we can develop more tomorrow. So I have considered this like an introduction that we will develop tomorrow morning. But if you have any question or something is not clear, I have tried to don't take too much time. But also, Simonetta? Pier, devi dire qualcosa?
Okay, we can stop here the YouTube streaming, and we will continue with the questions. It's open, the microphone on the other hearing. Okay, we stop here the YouTube streaming, and we will continue with the questions after the stopping of the streaming.
Io non sento.
Io lo sento, Fabio.
We close the streaming, and for who is following
Sono io che non
from
sento,
YouTube, We will meet tomorrow morning at 11 Italian time for the second part of the masterclass. Just some seconds for the closing of the YouTube streaming.